Hello, everybody, and welcome to Kyrus Has Friends, the show where I sit down with the people that matter to me the most, and those people are my friends. Before we get started with our special guest today, be sure to follow me on my favorite social media platforms. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Vibe with Kai. You can also follow me on, Snapchat and TikTok before it gets banned, of course. You can follow me there at Kyrus Keenan. And if you want, you can visit my website, thevibewithkai.com, where I'm always posting videos, blogs, and things that'll help you do good, feel good, be good, and live a good life full of good vibes. But enough about me. We have a Doctor Bartender in the house today. We have a person that I've wanted to sit and talk with for quite some time, and now he's here. We're sitting here talking, and I'm excited. I'm sitting here with somebody. He is a musician, a bartender. He is a positive energy influencer. He does a little bit of everything. I'm sitting here with Ernest Rhodes, a.k.a. the Doctor Bartender. What's up, man? How are you?
Not much. This is kind of early for me. I'm typically working nights. Slowly adjusting to a new schedule now that I'm working part-time due to pandemic stuff.
Right.
Got up early, made some breakfast, went for a walk, made myself some coffee, so I'm feeling good.
So you're feeling good, you're feeling ready to go. You had your coffee, your breakfast. What was for breakfast today?
I made some apple cinnamon oatmeal, which I know a lot of people are like, that's boring, but
no,
it gets it going for me.
Here's the thing. So my mother, she used to make oatmeal for me all the time. But it was always like just oatmeal. Like just that. There was no nothing. It's just normal oatmeal. And I thought that was normal, but then as I got older, I was like, wait a second. There's other types of oatmeal. There are things that you can add to the oatmeal to make it taste even better.
The good people at Quaker know what they're doing.
That's funny. Wait, so but you're also very much you work out. You're into fitness. You want to make sure that you're in the best shape possible. Have you found that to be more difficult or more easy as the pandemic has gone on?
Interestingly enough, a little bit of both. I think when the pandemic first hit, it was super easy because I was like, wow, I've got all this time, plenty of time to go for a run or get in this workout or get in that workout. But after a while, it's almost too routine. So you're just like, man, I've been hitting it so much harder than I normally hit it. Let me pump the brakes a little bit. I'm going to chill a little bit. And then you're like, well, now I pumped the brakes for 3 weeks and I've got 4 extra pounds around the middle.
That's funny.
And it's interesting because I was talking to our good friend Sue, as she's an ace at holding everybody accountable.
Yeah, she's great. By the way, he's talking about our good friend Sue, who has a podcast called Self-Love Diaries, I believe it's called. And she's fantastic. So if you get a chance to go listen to that, Sue with the Self-Love Diaries.
Yeah, and the thing I was sharing with her is that for me lately, it's more food. I have the discipline to run 3 to 5 miles 3 times a week. Yeah. I don't necessarily always have the discipline to put down a piece of pizza or to say no to that burger and fries. Like I can do HIIT training for an hour and a half, 2-3 times a week. I don't have any issues committing to that. But when someone's like, you want to order a pizza? I'm just like,
in your defense, pizza, it's pizza. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with pizza.
So
that's
right
funny.
Now, I'm just more focused on trying to make healthier food choices. So hence the oatmeal. Granted, probably not the healthiest oatmeal in the world with a reasonable amount of sugar.
But you're still doing you.
Yeah. But
So I need to ask, where does the Doctor Bartender name come from? Where does that originate, and what does it mean to you?
Okay. Well, it initially started, the bartender thing is I am a bartender, but before I was a bartender, I was in school. I was going to school for psychology. It was my plan to go to graduate school and get a PhD in psychology and practice. But a few weeks before graduate school, after acceptance and a few other things, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but at least for that moment, in that moment in time, I knew that I didn't want to go to graduate school. So I'm originally from Springfield, Illinois. I went to school in Southern Illinois. Literally the day after I graduated, I moved up here to Minneapolis. I literally had my degree, $200, my car, some clothes, and a couch to crash on when I got here. And I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And eventually when I got there, I found a job working for a company that I'm pretty sure is dead and gone now. But what they used to do was they used to sell and design software programs that would help school districts monetize standardized test scores.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that kind of allowed me to use my psychology major and my business administration minor, but it was horribly boring. And I had just moved to the big city and all my friends were bartending and I was like, damn, I want to do that, you know? So that's what I switched over into doing, and I've been doing that well over 10 years. But I've always kept in my mind that I can always go back to school if I want to. That's why I attached the doctor in front of the bartender, because I don't know if I'm done with school or if I'm done with academia, but if I return, it will be to do that, to get a degree in psychology.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you say that, though, because I feel like bartenders are sometimes our best psychologists. I think you and I have talked about this a little bit before, but I feel like sometimes like people just feel comfortable talking to bartenders about their life, even though they've never met the bartender before. Like the only connection that they have is that there's an exchange of goods. Like, I will give you money if you give me alcoholic beverage. Now, let me tell you about my life.
Yeah, that's very real. It's an interesting part of our culture. And it was something, to be perfectly honest, when I first started bartending, that's not really, I was like, I didn't really sign up for all this. Like, I wanted to work nights and make drinks and leave with a big fat wad of cash in my pocket. Like, I didn't want to work those Tuesday lunch shifts where the guy who just lost his job wants to tell you his story.
Right.
And as you learn a lot about life and the world and people that way.
Right.
So
do you find that you sometimes use the things that you've learned while in school do you use that while you're bartending sometimes when you're talking to people?
Yeah, in some cases I do. And it's been a while since I've been in school. And again, to be fair, I have a bachelor's degree. I don't have a doctorate, so I'm not a doctor. I don't have a license to practice, anything like that. But I do remember some of those little key points about just communication and listening, and realizing that when someone is coming in to their bartender or their barber, whoever they're sharing their problems with, that's a pretty solid indicator that there might not be other people in their lives to share that with.
Right. I see.
You know,
I see.
not always, because some people just love to chat for the sake of chatting. Sometimes
that's me.
You have to keep in mind that maybe this dude is spilling his guts to me because he has a wife that doesn't listen, or maybe he has adult kids that don't listen, or you know, maybe his boss is not the best person in the world and is not the most understanding person. So I always kind of keep those things in mind when that happens, for sure.
Do you find that it's hard to be that person sometimes? Like, if you know that you're the only, perhaps that you may be the only person in your life, in their life, that they can maybe even open up to. Do you find it hard? Do you find any pressure in that?
Not always. Sometimes I do, but not always. Sometimes there is, because like we're all human beings and we have all our days. Like sometimes I'll have a really rough day and then I go into work and I just want to get through my shift and go back home.
Sure.
I don't really want to hear, other people's problems. But that's just the nature of the industry. I mean, whether you're a server or a bartender, or just anytime you're dealing with the public, and in some way, shape, or form, dealing with other people and what they're thinking and what they're feeling is just a part of your job. So there are days where I'm a little less receptive to it, but I would never let that person know that, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, there's been plenty of times where I was like, man, I would really rather not be bothered with this, but they don't know that's how I'm feeling. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm there to provide a service. And even if that service is a little bit more than just making you a cocktail right now, so be it. At least that's my philosophy. You could probably talk to 10 other bartenders and get 10 different ideas or answers to that question, but that's where I'm coming from. Right.
Well, I one thing that I've noticed just about you on social media in general is that you have taken up the I guess responsibility, or your niche now has slowly started to become like spreading positive energy and good vibes, and I love that kind of stuff. You know, I love that people are using their platforms for that. What made you decide to take that route of just spreading positive energy on your platforms?
I think, honestly, and you've probably heard this a million times, but other content creators and movers and motivators such as you, such as Shane Makita, such as Joe Tang, You know, just tapping into that energy, there's something about it that's a little bit contagious.
Yeah.
And granted, my presence on TikTok and Instagram is primarily to entertain. Like, that's my goal. I want to make you laugh. I want to make you think. I want to give you an aha moment. But at the end of the day, like, if I'm not giving you some sort of warm energy with that, even when I talk about stuff that might be a little bit heavier, controversial, like the pandemic or what happened here in Minneapolis over the summer, there's got to be some level of warmth and positivity or some type of light at the end of the tunnel. And even if I stray from that, like, there have been plenty of videos that I've put it on TikTok or Instagram, and then like 20 minutes later been like, oh, that's not the energy I want to give people.
Right. I've done that.
It either gets set to private until I'm ready to share it, or it just gets deleted.
I've definitely done that before. There's been a couple of videos that in the moment I'll share it and I'll start seeing some of the responses, and either it's like, no, that's not what I was going for, or I'll be like, you know what, that's not me. I was in my feels. So I'm just going to get rid of that, you know, because I don't want to be responsible for spreading any sort of negative energy. But you kind of just alluded to this, and this was something I was going to ask you about. So you live in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And which has, to say the least, has been in the news just a little bit this year. How are you feeling, you know, given the situations that have taken place in that state, in Minnesota, and just how it's affected the world in a way, the Black Lives Matter movement? What is it like being in the heart, like legit in the heart of this movement right now? What is it like for you?
It's really interesting because I get the perspective of being right in the middle of it, but I also, because of news and social media, get to see the way the rest of the world sees things here. And I can tell you some things that the rest of the world might not know, that we're still having protests on a regular basis. Granted, they're much smaller than what you saw in the summer. They're always peaceful protests, but there's still that Black Lives Matter voice being thrown out into the world from here on a weekly basis. It's also really interesting to see how much healing has occurred, and yet there's still so much to do. Like, I live in uptown Minneapolis, which is about, just to give you guys some perspective, it's about 10 blocks south of downtown. It is arguably one of the most densely populated parts of the Twin Cities, like the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And half of the buildings, and when I say this is not hyperbole or I'm not exaggerating, half the buildings are still boarded up here.
Really?
Yeah. And that's either due to the pandemic or the riots or a combination of the two. So when I think of places like the Red Cow, which is one of my favorite burger places, boarded up and closed. The Walgreens pharmacy was set on fire. It's boarded up and closed. The CVS pharmacy boarded up and closed. The Apple store that's 2 blocks from my apartment, it's boarded up because it got looted. The H&M store across the street from the Apple store, it's still boarded up. So we are learning to go back to our everyday lives in what to us now sort of feels like normal, but I'm guessing if you don't live here and you walk into this neighborhood, it kind of has this almost like post-apocalyptic sort of, everything's normal and everybody's happy and people are walking their dogs and going for jogs and they're going to the bakery and getting donuts, but half the buildings around you are still boarded up.
Right. What do you feel, this is always a tough conversation to have, right? Because of just how sensitive it is and all of that. But there are a few things that I wrote down that I wanted to ask you about this, because these are things that I've talked to some of my friends about, and they've had some really interesting perspectives. So I guess the first question I want to ask is, you just talked about the riots and how the riots are, you know, might be partly responsible for just the closing of a lot of the, you know, the stores and things that are in that area, small businesses and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on rioting and the destruction of a town, really?
That is an interesting question, because it's sometimes difficult to answer because you fear that people won't necessarily understand your answer. But my answer, with all that being said, is that on one hand, I do not condone or support the destruction of property or damage, or definitely not the hurting or harming of any human being.
Sure.
But I have to be honest and say, I understand where that frustration comes from.
Yeah.
Like when you are so, I was going to use the word disenchanted, but that doesn't seem like a strong enough word. Right. When you are so out of touch with the system in which you are placed in, as far as it feeling like it treats you fairly, yeah. I understand that level of anger and frustration. Now, am I capable of that? I am not. Right. I am not the type of person, even with all the anger and frustration, that can throw a brick through a window. That is just me.
Right.
But everyone's experiences are different. Yeah. This is a murder George Floyd's murder took place in the heart of South Minneapolis, which is about 6 miles away from where I live. Oh, wow. And keep in mind that happened on a Tuesday. The rioting started there. By Friday, it was 2 blocks away from my apartment. It just kind of spread.
Sure.
And of course there was extra stuff too. You had all these people who were here legitimately for a good cause coming from out of town, but you also had troublemakers coming from out of town. So my thoughts on that is, it really is tragic and unfortunate that businesses are closed, that people have lost jobs. But ultimately, I think the loss of life of marginalized people at the hands of a system that doesn't care enough about them is more tragic than that. I have friends in the service industry, bartenders and servers, who still haven't gone back to work. Yeah. And they feel the way I feel. They're like, you know what? I don't have a job, but the place where I used to work burned to the ground because people weren't being treated the way they needed to be treated. And that's just my take on it. And I also have a very open mind. I'm not one of these persons or people who will say, you're wrong about this and I'm right. Mm-hmm. I think open dialogues like this are beautiful. And amazing.
I agree.
But that's my take on it. I think it's such a tragedy what's happened to this city. And here's something else that other people might not know. When cities or states go through a natural disaster, you can call on the government for FEMA assistance.
Right.
And I don't necessarily know how that works or worked with the state of Minnesota, but we applied for FEMA assistance for the federal government to literally rebuild South Minneapolis, and the federal government said no. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know enough about it, and I don't want to pretend to know enough about it. You know what I mean? I don't want to be that guy. But I will say this: without that assistance, it's going to be a long, hard ride to rebuild that part of the city.
Right.
And thankfully, here's the bright side: so many people have come together and said, we're better than this.
Right.
We have to be better than this. We have to hold the system accountable more. We have to love each other more. We have to not resort to violence all the time just because we can.
Right.
And I'm here for that too. Yeah.
The other question that I wanted to ask, and this was a conversation. This was a tough conversation that I had with a friend of mine this past weekend, and she brought up a very interesting point, a point that I don't necessarily agree with, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So the conversation that came up was, and it all spurred from a conversation I had with another friend of mine. His name is Talmadge Spicer, aka My Guy T Spice on TikTok and Instagram and all that. And he alluded to something, and I think my friend probably took this the wrong way, but it's in and of itself, it's an interesting point of view. So she said that we go through life as Black men saying there's a chance that we are going to face discrimination of some sort, right? That, we might have to work harder for certain things because of the color of our skin, because we are Black men, right? My friend has stated that when we're growing up or when we're raising children, should we say that to our young children, saying, hey, there is a chance as a Black man or woman that you will have to face some sort of discrimination and that you have to work harder, or things like that? Should we tell our children that, or should we not? Because to her point, by saying that we're by telling our children that, we're instilling what she called reverse racism, where um, where we're instilling that white people are just going to like, or that we should be careful with white people in
I
general.
understand what you're saying.
Do you get what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I do.
And that we shouldn't, that we're kind of uh, limiting ourselves by stating that we're going to have, that we're going to be disenfranchised, that we're going to have to work harder and things like that. She asked if I would ever talk to my children about that, and I said 100% yes.
Absolutely.
I would say to my children, there is a chance that you are going to experience this, right? Because that's what my parents did to me, and
Yeah,
I think I turned out okay, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
But to her point, she's saying that she feels that my mindset on this has limited myself, or limited my growth, has limited my ability to think outside of the box in this regard. Would you have a conversation with a young man or woman of color uh, and say that type of stuff? Would you warn them about this?
I absolutely would, but I would also stress that this isn't so much about demonizing white people. It's more about acknowledging a system that is not right. It's broader than just people, I think, and we live in a system where racism and racist practices are systemic, and I think it's important that young people of color know that. And I don't necessarily think that that blocks out your ability to hope for a better future and, more importantly, work for a better future. But I think we have to acknowledge things as they are. And if we don't acknowledge things as they are, that sets us up for harm and failure, I think. And again, that's just my take. And we could probably have this conversation with 15 other black men and get 15 other answers. But I would say I agree with your perspective 100%. And again, it's not so much about demonizing people. It's more about acknowledging a system that is not working the way it's supposed to work.
Right. Would you consider that reverse racism?
I would not.
Mm-hmm.
I really wouldn't, because I think you can acknowledge those issues and then acknowledge the fact that there are beautiful, amazing people of all shades, backgrounds, cultures. We have the misfortune of just living in a country where it is like this.
Right. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It kind of hit me different. You know what I'm saying? Like, as we were sitting there having this conversation, one of the one of the words that was used was the word hindered. That my view on this has hindered my thoughts on this, and I just didn't necessarily agree with that. And because, like, she didn't deny that there is systemic oppression, that there isn't racism. It's
Sure.
that we shouldn't talk to our children about this, because it's just guiding them in a direction where they are likely to just have these thoughts about white people that
Right.
may hinder their thought process. But I don't think it's that black and white. Pardon the
Don't
pun. You know, pardon the pun. I don't think it's that black and white. You know, and also she asked if I would talk to my children about this, and I said I would, but I would also talk to whomever. If I'm married, I would say, okay, how do you want to approach this, right? Because obviously it's a joint decision there. But like, yeah, I wanted to get somebody. I haven't had a chance to really talk to anybody about that yet, because it happened fairly recently. But I wanted to, because I knew you had your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, and I was curious what you thought about all of that.
Yeah, ultimately, I think we could acknowledge that there are some injustices, and at the same time acknowledge that people in general, human beings in general, have the potential to be amazing and beautiful and caring and caregiving, and I think the vast majority of us are.
Yeah.
But we also have to recognize injustices that literally make us unsafe.
Yeah.
I think we owe it to not only ourselves, but just the community at large.
Right. I do want to shift to your music career, because you do make music, and which I find awesome, which is really, really cool. How did you get into that? How did you, like, how is that going?
Well, I had always dabbled in music since high school, and when I got finished with college and moved up to Minneapolis, again, the whole deciding I didn't really want to go to graduate school, I just found an amazing hip hop scene here in Minneapolis and wanted to be a part of it. And coming from, I was born and raised in Springfield, Illinois.
Right.
I went to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, Illinois. These are small communities, Springfield's, barely 100,000 people. Carbondale is 30,000 people. So I was never really in an environment where, like, oh, you can write and record and play a show in front of people. And so I got up here and I was like, damn, if I meet the right people and keep going to these open mics, I can probably make some stuff happen. So I've been on kind of a hiatus for the last 4 or 5 years. And by hiatus, I just mean not super active, maybe playing a couple shows a year, maybe recording 1 or 2 tracks a year, not really playing anything out of town. But when I moved up here, I just kind of knew that creative outlet was something that I could actually pursue. It's like, if I did this, I could actually get in front of people and perform. I could actually record, this going way back to when I first got here, I could record a CD and sell that CD at a show for $10 a pop. So that's kind of how I got into music. I'd always been that kind of creative person and liked writing. And on the rare occasions I did record, I enjoyed that. But when I got to Minneapolis, I was just like, I'm in the big city, and granted, Minneapolis isn't big compared to New York, LA, blah, blah.
And Philly, you got to throw Philly in there, Philly in the house.
Like, I live in a city that has sports teams, go Vikings, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have that where I was from. So I came here and I was like, let's do it. And I was really fortunate to link up with other artists, both in the hip hop scene and the punk scene, that were just like super welcoming. They're just like, to be honest, you're not that good, but you'll get there. Oh, no. You know what I mean? And it's like, of course I'm not that good. Like, like this 25-year-old dude who's never really rapped before.
But you're living your best life, and that's all that matters, man. Like, legit.
And I did get better with time,
And so you have the music scene, and obviously, we met via the TikTok, obviously, and that's changed, I think, all of our lives, because it's amazing how this platform has connected so many people that we may not have ever connected. Like the fact that I don't know if you and I would ever have crossed paths. I mean, not saying that we wouldn't have, but like, it's just amazing how that platform has brought so many people together and like has created this little community of people that just uplift each other and all of that. And so I guess to kind of just wrap it up, what piece of advice would you give to somebody right now, that, because we were talking about how 2020 has just been quite the interesting year, to say the least. Yes. And like people like you and I were able to I guess find the silver linings in a lot of things. Like, we could do it easily, like, even though it might be a challenge sometimes, we still find a way to find the silver linings in what we do. That's not easy to do, right? What would you say to somebody right now that is feeling down, that is like, 2020, I want this year to be over? What would you say to them right now to kind of, give them this hopeful feel for the rest of the year?
Man, that's an excellent question. I think I would tell them to, one, do their best to practice gratitude, because in spite of this year not being the greatest year, you're still here. You're still, like, you woke up this morning and the sun was up, and maybe it was even out too. You know what I mean? That. And the other thing is, and this is going to sound really cliche because I think a lot of people say this, but when I say it, I genuinely mean it. Sometimes you just have to go for it. If 2020 has taught us anything, is that stuff can change on a dime. Like, if in January you had told me that in March there would be a pandemic, and in June my city would be on fire for 10 days, I would have been like, you're crazy. But that's exactly what happened. So if there's something you want to do, just go for it. And that doesn't mean don't plot. That doesn't mean don't prepare. That doesn't mean make irrational decisions and be like, well, I'm just going to drop out of my school and like, I'm not saying don't plan. But what I'm saying is if there's something you want to do, go for it. Do your best to put a plan in place and just make it happen.
And just go for it. Yeah, absolutely, man. Real quick. I need to, because I see the Star Wars figurines in the background. And I know that you're a big Star Wars fan, so I need you to tell me that I'm right. Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie of all time. Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie of all time.
I see why
Dude.
many people believe that.
No.
I have to say The Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie of all time. I would put Rogue One third, but maybe that's another conversation for another time.
I know. Here's the thing. I totally get your thoughts on this, but I always love having this conversation because I feel like Rogue One never got its due.
I would agree with that 100%. It's an excellent film. It is an excellent film. Yeah.
And what's funny is that going into it, I was feeling, because I know they were having like just a lot of issues just behind the scenes and things like that. And then, so like leading up to it, I'm like, this movie's not going to be good. And then I saw it, and I was like, this movie was great. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And I don't ever rewatch movies, right? I don't like, once I see a movie, it's hard for me to watch it again. I rewatched Rogue One, and it's still good. And this was after The Rise of Skywalker that I rewatched it. And I'm like, this movie's so good. So out of the three main storyline, the more recent, three, which one was the best? Which one was the worst?
Ooh, man, that's tough.
Uh-huh.
I think, I will say, I think of the sequels, I do think that The Force Awakens was the best one.
I agree.
Episode 7.
I agree.
The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, I haven't really decided yet. I will say
I did not like it. I did not like it.
Yeah, those last two. I mean, I'm a Star Wars fan at heart, so I'm also not super. I try not to be super critical.
Yeah, that's fair.
But clearly, The Force Awakens was the superior of the three.
Yes.
And as far as 8 and 9, still, there's just some things that are a little wonky about each film that I'm not super into.
What's funny is that I've grown a bigger appreciation for Episode 8 after watching Episode 9, because I wasn't the biggest fan of Episode 8, but then I go back and I watch Episode 8 after watching Episode 9. I'm like, well, I guess it wasn't that bad. I guess I'll deal with this. That's funny. Well, I'm so happy that we finally got to sit and chat. If people want more Dr. Bartender, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on TikTok at Doctor Bartender. It's just DoctorBartender. Because lots of times, the only reason I do that is sometimes people search Dr. Bartender with the abbreviated doctor. With DR.
Okay.
And if you do that, you'll get some other stuff, but you won't get me, unfortunately. And on Instagram, it's the Doctor Bartender. Same scenario, just THE in front of it. And on YouTube, I'm gonna have to switch it up. You can search YouTube for Dr. Bartender, and I'll pop up. But I think the URL is actually Ernest Rhodes TV.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, friends, I'm gonna put that I'm gonna put all of those in the description of this. If you're listening, if you're watching, I'm gonna put that all that stuff down below. That way you can go follow my dude over here, man, because he is a good man. And we've been wanting to sit and chat for a while, and I'm glad that we finally got to do it, my friend. So honestly, thank you so much for sitting with me. It's always nice to sit and talk with a friend, and here, cheers to more conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. This was great, man. This was so dope. I can't wait to do it again sometime.
Yeah, man. And everybody else, if you want more Vibe with Kai and Kyrus has friends, you can always visit me on my favorite social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Vibe with Kai. And then you can visit me on Snapchat and on TikTok at Kyrus Keenan. And obviously, you can visit my website, thevibewithkai.com, where I'm always posting blogs and videos and things that'll help you do good, feel good, be good, and live a good life full of good vibes. With that said, thank you so much again for sitting with me, Mr. Dr. Bartender. Everybody else, God bless and good vibes.